Good afternoon, friends. It's Tuesday, January 26th, and time finally for my daily reflection. Last Tuesday, I shared with you my desire to remember those who have shaped my ministry, both here at Shepherd of the Hills and during my career. Well, today I want to tell you about my intern supervisor, Pastor Frank Kirchner. Pastor Frank interviewed me and some others during my second year at seminary, and then extended an invitation for me to come to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, for my one-year internship at St. Paul Lutheran Church. Of course, I willingly and gladly accepted the invitation. So in August of 1977, Joan and I caravanned from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, down to Baton Rouge to begin a year of life and ministry in the Cajun state. Frank and his wife Ethel welcomed us with a wonderful meal at their home that first night after we had sort of unloaded the U-Haul truck in the provided apartment. When we had settled in to a working routine, it was golf every Monday, free of charge, because that's what they do down in Baton Rouge. Staff meetings on Tuesday mornings, me teaching confirmation class and on Wednesday evening. There was always a congregational event on Friday evenings. And then there was the typical other stuff of pastoral responsibility. Hospital and home visits, community service, working with the detox and rehab center, and of course, conversations in the office and elsewhere. During one of those Monday golf times, Frank said that he wanted us to do a dialogue sermon, and he had already selected a text for our consideration. Well, no, we were going to use it, no consideration. I only remember that our collaborative sermon would be in November, sometime around Thanksgiving. I do have a memory of enjoying the work of putting our differing styles together. Now, Frank loved his manuscript, but was also smart enough to, as he said, to not let a few contemporary thoughts get in the way of the manuscript. I, however, being a newbie at preaching, was still very tied to my manuscript, which I think I probably memorized almost every word of it. Now, something else to know about this wonderful mentor of mine. Frank had an incredible sense of humor, and he was very quick-witted. Geraldine, our church office secretary, as she was titled in those days, told me that the main reason Frank offered me the interim position was because he felt that we could get along together. Now, I had assumed, because in the conversations we had back in Gettysburg, he discovered that I played golf, and I learned that he played golf as well. I thought that was the reason. But no, Geraldine told me that he liked my sarcasm and my wit. When she said that, it made my year complete. I also knew that Frank was an early riser because I gave up early on trying to beat him to the office. Now, I have always had the practice of arriving early on Sunday mornings to prepare myself for worship. And even when I got there 2 hours before worship began, it meant that I was always the second one in the office, and Frank had already finished his first and/or second round of coffee for the day. Frank also had so many other talents. He was a superb singer, and he joined the choir almost every Sunday when they sang their anthem. He also loved working with the kids, and I think he begrudgingly passed the confirmation and early communion program to me to give me something more to do. But he more than made up for that with his yearly kids' cantata. Now, the year Joan and I were there, he directed Jonah, A Tale of a Whale, involving most of the Sunday school-aged kids. But let's go back to the dialogue sermon. We worked on it, prepared it, rehearsed it on the Wednesday morning before we were to give it, and then again Friday evening just before the congregational volleyball fellowship time. And Frank was so pleased with our work that I remember him saying we could skip Saturday's rehearsal. I was overjoyed. with that statement because it meant that Joan and I could get up early and head to our favorite haunt, New Orleans, for some good music and food. On Sunday morning, I got to the church early. Of course, I was second at church. And as I was walking down the hallway, Frank was yelling from his office, "Have you seen the news this morning? Have you read the paper yet?" I told him, "No, why? And what news?" He then gave me a short 10-second lecture that every good pastor should make sure that he or she got up early on Sunday to check the news and read the front sections of the newspaper before coming to church, just to make sure that the world hadn't ended yet. Then he told me that in some ways the world had ended last night. See, there had been a shooting and a mass suicide in a place called Jonestown, Guyana. First of all, I had never heard of Jonestown. I barely knew where Guyana was, and I wondered why. Frank continued on that Congressman Leo Ryan of California, San Jose area, had been killed at the airport along with some others, and that others in his party had been wounded, and they apparently crawled into the jungle around the airport to escape and had survived. Others, back in the compound in Jonestown, had committed suicide, and there were supposed to be something like 1,000 deaths, men, women, and children. He said, "I'm not doing the sermon today. We're not preaching the way we expected to. I'm going to go off script and use the second lesson as the basis of my sermon today." He was just finishing it. He wrote that sermon in a little less than an hour, I think, which is kind of unheard of for him. He struggled over words to make sure that everything was right, but this one just flew, apparently, from his fingertips to the typewriter. That's way before we had computers. And as he was finishing that statement about having already written it, I asked, "So what is the second?" And he cut me off. It's 1 James chapter 4, verses 1 through 4. And the most important verse in those, and words in those verses are, "Test the spirits to see if they are from God." In his whirlwind moment, he got up, walked away, and said, "Pray for me, because I'm still nervous." I remember hearing that sermon at both services that Sunday morning. And I have a memory that it was a powerful sermon to be preached and heard. As we played golf the next day, he told me once more that in order to be a good pastor, I should be paying attention to what's going on in the world. That I should also be willing to allow God to move me at a moment's notice and throw away everything I had prepared just to be ready when God spoke. Never shy away from the hard stuff, he said. Always be open to God telling you to change course in a moment's notice. Well, over those last 42 years, I've tried to do just that. There was another moment later in that week, as Frank and I were talking, that I learned more of why that sermon was so powerful on Sunday. Frank was speaking from his heart, and he was preaching to one family in that congregation. I think the family was there, but in a sense it didn't matter. He was preaching to one family. Why? Because that family had experienced a college-aged child who joined a cult while away at college. They were devastated. They struggled with understanding why. They tried to figure out how it is that the child that they had raised, that had been brought up within this Lutheran congregation, this child that Frank had taught in confirmation class, this child who had been part of the youth group that Frank and Ethel led, this child had not tested the spirits to see if they are from God. and had joined a life-defirming cultic group. Frank spoke about that one kid to that one family. And for me, that made the sermon even more powerful. Frank, you've since gone to the heavenly kingdom of preaching. You've joined the ranks of those great preachers and pastors. But I think of you from time to time, and I thank you for the way you mentored me, for the way you taught me, for the way you showed me, for the way you gave me the opportunity to grow and to enjoy a round of golf with you on a great Monday. It's those kind of folks who have touched all of our lives, I'm sure. You might have a Frank in your life, someone who has made your life and your work, your ministry, more vital, more important, who has helped you grow in your faith and in your ministry. Because what you do every day is ministry. Make no mistake about it. You probably preach to one person each time you think and carry on conversations. Frank taught me that too. I look forward to seeing you on Sunday. I understand it's going to be a cold and rainy day in Vacaville area. So stay warm, and please stay warm until then as well. Be safe out there. The rains are coming. Although we need them, I hope they come gently, because those of us who live in this area are concerned about major rain happening in areas that had devastation of ground cover this year. Sometimes it never seems to end, does it? But be safe out there. Until we see each other again, please, 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 you know the drill. Wash your hands 20 seconds at a time, a couple of times a day. Use hand lotion to keep them nice and soft. Stay physically apart from one another unless you're part of the same household or bubble. Wear your masks most all the time. And while we have moved away from the regional stay-at-home orders and things are reopening, please, please, please be careful out there. Don't make foolish decisions, please. Test to see if this is really a God moment for you. I know I will be. And even when I do go out in places, I'll still be wearing my mask because that'll help me. And of course, Sergeant Esterhaus says, be careful out there as he dismisses us for our daily rounds of ministry and mission.